Olá, eu sou Catiúcia Sotomayor e este é o Agroamérica, programa em parceria com o Instituto Interamericano de Cooperação para a Agricultura, o ICA, aqui no AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. A proposta é mostrar iniciativas inovadoras e compartilhar boas práticas dos 34 Estados-membros que podem ser replicadas em todo o mundo na busca pelo desenvolvimento agrícola e pelo bem-estar rural. Hoje o assunto é a atuação de uma organização dedicada à cooperação técnica e ao desenvolvimento sustentável de países do Caribe, com destaque para a segurança alimentar na região e o papel do jovem no campo para o fortalecimento da agricultura. Quem conversa com a gente é Didax Jules, diretor-geral da Organização dos Estados do Caribe Oriental, em inglês OECS, the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States. Welcome and thank you very much for your presence here with us, Dr. Didax Jules.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
So let's start talking about the importance of OECS. In June, you celebrate 40 years of integration for progress and sustainability, right?
That's correct. It's 40 years, actually. I'm not sure how you say that in Portuguese, but it's 40 years of integration. And it's been a very useful journey. We have made many strides during that period, including in the 11 member states of the OECS, free movement of people, free circulation of goods and capital. And we are one of 3 regions in the world with a regional central bank. So we have a currency union with the Eastern Caribbean dollar being the strongest currency in the Caribbean right now. It's been in existence for over 30 years, and we just launched the DCash, which is a digital EC dollar, in order to promote the objective of greater financial inclusion.
And what are the strategies to enhance the food security in the Caribbean? Is the organization working on that?
Yes, food security is a matter of great priority for us. In the first instance, we are too dependent on imports of food, particularly from North America. The OECS imports over $1 billion worth of food into the countries, and that is not counting. I should say that within the membership of the OECS comprises 6 independent member states, 3 British dependencies or British associated states, and 2 French territories, Martinique and Guadeloupe. So when we discuss the food security, we are not talking about including the French countries, but $1 billion imported into the English-speaking OECS member states. And this obviously is an unsustainable situation. Not only are we vulnerable because of the huge slice of our food that is imported, but also because geographically our supply chain comes through Florida in the United States. And as you would have seen in recent times, there's increasing frequency of hurricanes across the region. If none of the Caribbean islands were to be touched by a Category 5 hurricane, but Florida, God forbid, was to be hit, it would completely knock out the supply chain for the OECS because of the large concentration of imports of food from that particular location. So from a strategic perspective, it is important that we diversify our sources of food. It is also important that we, as largely formerly agriculture-based economies, get back to food security by growing what we eat and eating what we grow. There are also health reasons for this because, as you know, the world is now moving away from processed food into organic produce, fresh produce. So we are well positioned to undertake a food revolution in the OECS countries. And one of our key strategic partners in this effort is the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture.
So let's talk a little bit about the projects to enhance the food security and how you intend to do that.
In the first instance, a major initiative has to do with youth in agriculture, because surveys that have been done in the past have shown that the average age of farmers in the OECS is in the mid 60s, mid 60 years of age, the average age. So it is important that we look to and bring more young people into the sector. As you know, young people are very open to new technologies. So the question of appropriate technology, the incorporation of high tech in agriculture is something that is vitally important. We also have to ensure that in education, there is a concerted effort by our tertiary level institutions, and even from as basic, from even the elementary level of education, to have students appreciate the importance and value of agriculture. But what is really critical is to grow a new crop of agro entrepreneurs who are into not just the production of food, in organic, preferably organic food, but also looking at the value added. So the processing, bringing the, instead of just making use of the raw produce, creating value added products out of that. So a major thrust for us on the entrepreneurship front is growing those youth entrepreneurs. We've just launched a youth innovation lab that is going to culminate in September. And one of the areas of challenge for young people is to come up with ideas for more effective and efficient production in agriculture utilizing technology. But these innovations can also be no tech innovations, because sometimes it doesn't take high tech in order to boost productivity. So it's really a challenge to creativity and the imagination of young people to see the opportunities in agriculture. From an economic perspective, saving $1 billion US a year in food imports is going to make a huge difference to our economies. We tell people just do the mathematics and see how many young millionaires we can make if we were to um, achieve a degree of food security by producing more of what we eat in the OECS.
So you said it doesn't need to be high tech, right? But the digital agriculture is a really important issue nowadays, right?
Indeed, indeed, it is. And from the tech perspective, this is where I think at the level of the member states, we need to do some very serious interventions. So we are looking at things like the use of drones for mapping, the use of technology in monitoring weather patterns, being able to test soils more effectively. One of the things that a big project that we have coming up in the OECS is a whole GIS project that would look at mapping a number of key areas. So in agriculture, looking at a soil maps of the member states, so we know which soils are best suited for what types of production. Looking at the weather, the weather maps in terms of patterns of rainfall, so we can predict drought. We know which areas are most prone to drought, and therefore what kinds of arrangements or infrastructure needs to be put in place in order to ensure that they are not affected as bad as they have been with drought over years. There's also the use of mobile phones in order to create opportunities, especially with the Dcash being the Dcash, the digital currency of the OECS being made available through cell phones and so on for young persons, farmers, for it to be used to create a vibrant marketplace for agricultural produce. In all of these are ideas that we've been discussing with AICA in terms of the opportunities for partnership, learning from the experience of other countries. We also have close relations with the Food and Agriculture Organization, and we are looking to see in what ways we can develop that deep partnership that could help us to fast track and leapfrog on the technological front to ensure that the technologies we utilize are well identified, are strategically placed, and can deliver to the efficiencies that we seek in agricultural production.
But we can say that those are some challenges, right? Now, I think we should highlight some of the opportunities. How can agriculture move forward?
Well, the opportunities are, in a sense, embedded in the challenges that I spoke to. So, for example, if we are able to become more self-sufficient in food production, that alone is a giant marketplace that provides opportunity for the eradication of poverty, for rural communities to be more prosperous. The engagement of youth is an opportunity that also speaks to a viable future for agriculture, because if young people buy into the idea of agriculture as a career and not see it, as we say, in terms of the old technologies of cutlass and hoe, then there are huge opportunities here. The other big thing about the opportunities in the agricultural, the potential of an agricultural revolution is going to be its impact on health in the OECS, because we are one of the regions of the world that is most seriously impacted by non-communicable diseases. And these are lifestyle diseases that arise from bad eating habits, too much processed food, too much sugar. The OECS is part of a healthy lifestyles coalition in the Caribbean. We are a key partner in this that is trying to bring across and sensitize our populations to the need to change their eating habits. More exercise, eat what we grow what we eat organic, cut off processed foods, reduce sugar and other carbs that are not conducive to good health. So while we're talking about the opportunities in agriculture, they are an important kernel in a wider cluster of opportunities that will move development in the OECS forward.
And what about the agricultural policies of OECS countries? Do they have a common agenda, or we have to look at them individually?
No, because of the fact that the member states are part of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, we are guided by our guiding treaty is the revised Treaty of Basel, which speaks very specifically to the role of the OECS Commission in creating a harmonized approach in critical areas, from foreign affairs to agriculture to health to education, telecommunications. In fact, in some cases, we've even created our own institutions to drive that particular thing. So there's an institution called ECTEL, the Eastern Caribbean Telecommunications Authority, whose responsibility it is to harmonize telecommunications policy across the OECS footprint, and also to ensure that the telecom providers are properly regulated, that we are able to provide broadband as a public good at reasonable cost. So in that context, the Ministers of Agriculture, the Council of Ministers of Agriculture of the OECS, is the guiding body for the harmonized policies on agriculture. Now, what we do in agriculture in terms of the harmonization of our agricultural policy, also connects to harmonization in other areas. So, for example, the ministers of trade and the attorney generals of the OECS have worked out regulatory and legislative requirements for the free movement of goods across the OECS. Now, if we apply that to agriculture, it then means that we have to ensure that our phytosanitary regulations, while being compliant with international regulations so as to support the export of goods, extra agricultural produce, extra regionally, also has to protect within the framework of the OECS, protect islands from the spread of disease and fungus and so on. So the harmonization of phytosanitary regulations is one dimension of that. Then there's the question of how we deal with trade intra-regionally, so that moving goods from one country to the next should be as seamless a process as if you are moving goods from one community in a particular national space to another community. So the streamlining and the removal of impediments to trade, such as undue customs regulations, the removal of customs duties within the economic union, within the trade bloc, is going to be part of that agenda. But all of that helps to build our thrust in agriculture.
And we cannot mention the Caribbeans without relating it to tourism, right? So what is the role of tourism for agriculture development?
Tourism has a very important role to play because, again, a large part of that import bill I referred to earlier um, comes from the importation of goods for the tourism sector. Now, it's a delicate situation because, as you know, we are among the 10 most tourism-dependent countries in the world. Most of our member states are. In fact, I think five of them are among the 10 most tourism-dependent countries in the world, if you look at the contribution of tourism to employment and to the gross domestic product. So, in that context, the importation of food there are some areas where we have no choice but to allow the importation of food because one has to cater for tourist tastes. But at the same time, there are huge opportunities there for us to begin to cultivate the tourist palate for indigenous foods, for make use. We've had, for example, competitions, culinary competitions, where the best chefs across the OECS have had opportunity to take local products and create dishes, even some dishes that are familiar to tourists from the internationals, from the wider world, but to translate those dishes using local produce. So, for example, everyone globally is accustomed with Kentucky Fried Chicken and so on, with the use of potato fries. We are looking at things like sweet potato fries, which are much healthier. We are looking at cassava, the use of cassava flour. So there are a number of things that we are doing. We had, for example, a few years ago, a serious problem with invasive species, the lionfish decimating nearshore fisheries because they are very ravenous species. And we've not seen lionfish before. So a couple of our chefs, fishermen caught them, and a couple of the chefs in the OECS, some of the top chefs, decided to experiment with the lionfish and discovered that it was quite a delicacy. So then that led to fishing competitions and expeditions to see who could catch the most dried lionfish. And then for that became now a new staple, a new delicacy in the gourmet market in the OECS. So sometimes when you get what is a problem might become an opportunity, and we are actively looking for those opportunities. As the saying goes, when life gives you a lemon, you make lemonade.
Well, I don't know about the fish, but the flour, the cassava flour, and the chips of sweet potato are famous here too. So maybe we can exchange the ideas of this kind of food.
For sure,
But
for sure.
transforming agriculture.
We are very happy to learn from the experiences of our colleagues in Latin America and exchange of ideas and technology. Sorry for the interruption.
And transforming agriculture in the Eastern Caribbean is one of the priorities of the OECS. And you intend to achieve that, you already mentioned, with international cooperation too. What are the initiatives with ICA to promote agriculture and family farming in these countries?
Well, ICA is very involved with us in looking at, first of all, the transfer of technology, because that is going to be one way in which we can rapidly modernize and leapfrog our agricultural production. So that's a critical area. They're also very engaged in assisting us with exchange of not just the exchange of technology, but the exchange of experiences, ideas, methodologies, which is going to be very important, because sometimes you can save a lot of time, money, and effort by learning from the experience of other persons to leapfrog it. Thirdly, they are keen on working with us with respect to youth in agriculture. Now, the approach that we take into youth in agriculture is not for us as experts in agriculture between AICA and ourselves to define totally what has to happen. We are getting involved with the youth so that we get from them the ideas that they have, what are their aspirations in agriculture, and how can we help to direct these aspirations where they need augmentation? How can we finance them? How can we provide the technical support, the training required, create access to the technology that they need in order to realize these aspirations? And so we are hoping to tap the wide diversity of experience and expertise available, not just in AICA as an institution, but in the network of Latin America and the Caribbean that AICA serves, so as to create that agricultural revolution.
So you already mentioned the climate change and all the challenges of sustainability that you have to face. And how can we work to ensure the production and the distribution of food because it's one of the main issues faced nowadays?
Yeah, climate change has made this challenge all the more difficult because the strange thing about climate change, before we had a dry season and a wet season. The dry season had moderate droughts. In the wet season, we had occasional floods. Now with climate change, what we see happening is a complete, convolution of weather patterns, so that you have, even in the dry season, sometimes we've had floods occurring, flash floods with strange weather patterns. In the rainy season, we now have this season, for example, is predicted to be one of the more serious seasons in predictions of high category weather storms and weather patterns. So again, it's with a single hurricane, as happened in Dominica, and Hurricane Irma about 5 years ago, can completely wipe out not just the agricultural sector, but the whole GDP of the country within hours. And we've learned from these lessons because we realize now we have no choice as we plan for how do we, create that agricultural revolution we spoke about. How do we ensure its resilience, and its resilience on all fronts? Resilience from a production perspective in terms of how do we safeguard the crops? How do we build resilience from a climatic perspective in terms of being able to deal with episodes of drought? How can we deal with floods? How can we deal with hurricanes? We're looking also at economic resilience in the agricultural sector. For example, we have been talking to the Caribbean Catastrophic Risk Insurance Facility about creating parametric insurance for the agricultural sector so that farmers can be protected in the event of whatever we insure for. Let's say from a category 3 hurricane upwards, any occurrence of that will see an automatic payout to farmers of the insurance so that they don't have to go through the usual bureaucratic processes in private and the high cost of private insurances. So the countries as a whole would take that parametric insurance to cover the agricultural sector.
Unfortunately, our time is up, but we should say that the region's rich biodiversity calls for the formation of strategic partnerships and resource mobilization for effective implementation, including public and private sector partnerships, right?
Indeed, indeed. And that is a priority for us. In this case, there is some connection with AICA, but a major partner for us on the biodiversity front is UNCTAD, CITES, the World Convention on the Protection of Trade in Endangered Species. And we now have a pilot project running involving something called the queen conch. It is a shellfish that is a delicacy all across the Caribbean, but overfishing and overexploitation has put it in danger. So what we have now is looking at establishing sea farms that would cultivate the queen conch in order to return a portion to the wild and also to have a viable market for the queen conch for export as well as for use locally. And there are a variety of dishes that are being made with queen conch. It is a delicacy internationally, so it's a very lucrative market. The other is with sea moss, which is a gel from a particular type of seaweed that has all of the vitamins and the nutrition, the key nutritional requirements that the body requires, because it's also used in the cosmetic industry. That is also in the process in some experimental farms in the OECS, like in St. Lucia, in St. Vincent, they're beginning to experiment with that, so that we are looking to how we can leverage that biodiversity in order to, one, preserve the biodiversity, but also to make commercial use of it by transporting it from the realm of nature to the realm of production.
Thank you again, Director General of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States, OECS, Dr. Didacus Jules.
Thank you very much for having me.
E no Agroamérica de hoje nós falamos sobre a atuação de uma organização dedicada à cooperação técnica e ao desenvolvimento sustentável de países do Caribe, com destaque para a segurança alimentar na região e o papel do jovem no campo para o fortalecimento da agricultura. Você pode rever este programa e também outras entrevistas no nosso canal no YouTube. Aproveite para seguir a gente nas redes sociais, @AgroMaisTV. Continue com a programação do AgroMais, seu canal voltado para o agronegócio 24 horas. Obrigada pela companhia. A gente se vê.